Okay, this time I'm going to explain about the basic principles, or let's say dimensions, of highly sensitive people, including me. To be honest, a couple of years ago I noticed that I was rather sensitive, or let's say too sensitive, to my surroundings, and I did some research and I noticed that actually I was not alone. And I noticed that again, up to 15 to 20% of the entire population, all people actually are categorized according to HSPs, that is highly sensitive people or persons. The technical term for that is sensory processing sensitivity, or SPS. This is the technical term in the literature, psychological literature database. There are a variety, or let's say a number of symptoms, and I try to focus on the most important ones. For example, we HSPs, we tend to be overstimulated, overwhelmed by, for example, intense stimuli. For example, there is a siren nearby and we might get distracted, and so overstimulation is one of the basic and major symptoms of HSPs. And the other symptom is that we cannot handle too much information simultaneously. That is to say, we are not multitaskers. And of course there are degrees to HSP. It means that some people are notoriously sensitive, some others are less sensitive. The other point or symptom of HSP is that we get disgusted by violent scenes on TV, or actually if we witness something in person. And a defense mechanism to reduce the dire consequences dealing with, let's say, too much information, or some demanding tasks, is to organize or get organized, something that I do a lot. Sometimes I notice that if I do not organize my day, I get lost completely, and so I spend so much time organizing and scheduling my tasks, particularly if situations are upsetting in the face of, for example, crises. On the other hand, we tend to have a rich and complex inner lives. Because we are introspective people, the majority of us actually are introverted, up to 70%, but it was to my astonishment actually to notice that 30% of HSPs are extroverts or extroverted. I didn't know that, but I developed this understanding. We are spiritual people, and because of the fact that we are introspective and we have a rich inner life, and we pay a lot of attention to subtleties, that is, delicate differences. We pay attention to the details, and we tend to notice more than others. As I said, we are vigilant, circumspect, and observant. There is an idiom in English, it says, look before you leap, and that is completely attributed to us. I mean, we people, HSPs. And we are intolerant of ambiguity. It means that if something is not clear, we get confused. But if everything is clear, we just augment the level of our productivity. We prosper when everything actually is clear or organized. Because of the fact that we are intolerant of ambiguity, we are, let's say, good essayists when it comes to assessment. But we are not good at multiple choice questions generally, because sometimes actually they are confusing, and but when the questions or question items are open-ended, we are really creative and competent. And there are some misconceptions or myths about HSP. One of them I already told you about, which is the fact that actually it is a mental disorder. It is not, because up to 20% of all people actually have this quality. And another myth is that it is actually acquired. No, it is not acquired. It is an innate trait or personality trait or quality. You are born with that. So another let's say misconception is that it is the same as shyness. No, shyness, according to the psychological literature and database, is something that you get from the environment generally, but this is not the case about HSP. And I got all the information from Dr. Ellen Aaron, who is a specialized psychologist and therapist, and you could also Google her. And also she has a website on the same let's say issue, highly sensitive people. So the quality is the information I'm giving you is straight from the horse's mouth. I mean, so reliable. And let me see. Another dimension of highly sensitive people is that we are not good gamblers or risk takers. And because in order to be risk takers, you need to be tolerant of ambiguity. We are not. And to be honest, I've noticed that no matter how hard you try to change yourself, it is not that easy. I don't want to say that it's impossible, but I could say that it is next to impossible. So we have to find a way to deal with that. It is impossible, almost impossible, to change yourself, you know, because actually it is deeply rooted in your brain structure and information processing, let's say, principles or techniques that are deeply encoded in you. Because of that, because of the fact that we are overstimulated by stimuli, or we might get traumatized in reference to the topic we were talking about, or the subject we were talking about. I mean, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We need to take care of ourselves. And when it comes to decision making, the process is so deliberate. It means slow and very intense. So we are good decision makers, but it takes so much time. And sometimes, not in all cases, but sometimes we tend to become too critical of the performance of other people. For example, sometimes automatically we find faults in other people's performance or behaviors because we just compare their performance with ours. Our productivity goes down when overstimulated, as I said. So when we are overstimulated, we just forget about everything. Sometimes it has happened to me, you know, that, for example, if the situation is so critical, there are so many intense crises, I sometimes actually, for example, for one day completely, I do not do anything. And my mind just drifts, you know. And yeah, I noticed that actually this is one of the features of highly sensitive people. And thanks to this lecture and to this opportunity, I came to a deeper understanding of one of the most important personality traits of mine. And sometimes, because when you know about yourself, you develop some self-knowledge, self-consciousness, for sure, actually you are more competent in dealing with that. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So if you have any question, anything, any comment, any correction.
Do you think it is more difficult to have fun with sensitive people compared to the other group, I mean insensitive ones?
Well, that is a good question. You know, sensitive people, including me, have a unique sense of humor. And because of the fact that they pay special attention to the details, you know, so I think there are better comedians and satirists, let's say, satirists. And so you could have so much fun with them, you know. But because of the fact that we are sensitive, really highly sensitive people, when, for example, you do something wrong, they get hurt and they become reactive. So it's better to just behave well in in interaction with them. But if you don't do anything wrong, I think you could enjoy their being their friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but maybe,
yes.
For example, maybe they find, for example, some behaviors insulting easily. But those, for example, behaviors or treatments are not that insulting in depth.
You mean in comparison to other people?
Yeah.
We sometimes tend to magnify, for example, some misbehaviors, and this is out of our hands. So a person who wants to just make friends with us should bear in mind that we are really sensitive, and they should pay attention to that.
Yeah.
To be honest, I told you about in the middle of my presentation that for a while I did my best to change some parts of my personality, and I noticed that I was so incompetent, and I was blaming myself. And when I just particularly recently with the passage of time, for example during the last week, I noticed that we cannot change this innate attribute, let's say. I don't want to say that we cannot, but it's next to impossible. And there are some positive dimensions, or let's say a myriad of positive advantages or dimensions to that. For example, we tend to be really productive and creative when everything is clear. Our productivity goes up, and much better than other people.
Yeah.
So if you have any point about the three questions, I'm not going to pose them to you. So if you have some extra questions, you could pose, because I'm a good example of a highly sensitive person.
Yeah. Actually, if you care that we answer that, actually I can answer them.
No, I told you I'm not going to pose the questions to you. So if you have any further question.
No, I don't have any further question.
Is one of you actually categorized according to HSP?
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about the uh, signs of being highly sensitive. Maybe in some, for example, situations we are sensitive, but for example, maybe in communication, I'm not that sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but for example, when I'm working in some places towards the behaviors or responses of other colleagues and coworkers, I could be sensitive somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Or
No, I don't think that you are a sensitive. You fall into the category of HSP because to some extent I know you.
yeah,
I could say, fortunately, you're not,
okay,
or I don't know, maybe unfortunately, because I like this way, and
yeah,
But anyway, I like it for myself, not.
yeah,
Anyway, it's not that easy, dealing with this
right,
situation.
exactly.
And what about you, Arash? Do you think that you are?
As a matter of fact, I'm not sure, but what do you think? You know me also.
Yeah, our familiarity actually is shorter in comparison to Sasan. I know Sasan for at least 3 years. But I think you are to some extent, but not a very noticeable example of an HSP. Because you yourself said that you are an introverted to some extent. This is a very important point here. And it seems that you are intuitive and also polite, so polite. And this is another point, because when you're polite, you do not want to hurt others. And this is a reciprocal, let's say, reaction. But hopefully, fortunately, not a very intense example of that.
Right, thank you so much.
It was just a wild guess, and
How can we be sure about it?
Well, let me see. On Google, if you just hold on. I got it. hsperson.com. It's very simple. hsperson.com is the most reliable website, on the same issue.
Right.
And there are a lot of symptoms. I use those pieces of information for my presentation.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay.